She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask for pity. She simply rolled forward, one painful push at a time, clutching her appointment slip like a mission order. But the receptionist saw only a wheelchair and military insurance, so she made her wait. 1 hour, then 2, then 7, all while the pain tore through her body like the shrapnel still buried in her side. Nobody helped. Nobody asked. Until 6:45 p.m., when the chief of medicine stormed in, eyes locked on her, and saluted. Because this wasn't just another patient. This was the soldier who saved his life in Kandahar. If you believe respect shouldn't depend on money, type honor in the comments, like this video, and subscribe, because some heroes wait quietly until someone finally stands up for them. The automatic doors of St. Mary's General Hospital slid open with a soft hiss, and Lieutenant Sarah Chen rolled her wheelchair through the entrance. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished linoleum floor, but Sarah barely noticed. Pain radiated from her left side where shrapnel had torn through her body 8 months ago in Kandahar. The doctors had said the fragments were shifting, pressing against nerves that shouldn't be pressed. Today's appointment was supposed to fix that. Sarah wore a simple gray hoodie and jeans, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. To anyone passing by, she looked like any other patient. They couldn't see the Purple Heart tucked away in her bedroom drawer, or the commendation letters signed by generals whose names appeared in history books. They couldn't see the 3 soldiers she'd pulled from a burning Humvee while her own leg was shattered. All they saw was a young woman in a wheelchair, and apparently, that wasn't enough. The waiting room buzzed with the usual hospital energy. Nurses moved between stations, their scrubs rustling softly. Patients sat in uncomfortable chairs, some reading magazines, others staring at their phones. Sarah approached the reception desk where a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and manicured nails sat typing. Her name tag read, Jessica, Patient Services. "Good morning," Sarah said, her voice calm and respectful. "I have an appointment with Dr. Martinez at 9 a.m., Sarah Chen." Jessica barely looked up from her computer screen. "Insurance card and ID," she said flatly, extending her hand without making eye contact. Sarah pulled out her wallet and handed over the documents. Jessica scanned them quickly, her expression growing slightly annoyed. "Military insurance," she muttered. "These always take forever to process." "Is there a problem?" Sarah asked, maintaining her composure despite the dismissive tone. "Veterans think they deserve special treatment," Jessica replied, loud enough for nearby patients to hear. "You'll have to wait like everyone else. Take a number." Sarah took the small paper ticket with the number 47 printed on it. The electronic board displayed number 23. She did the math quickly. This was going to be a long wait. Finding a spot near the window, she positioned her wheelchair and settled in. The morning sun felt warm on her face, a small comfort in an increasingly uncomfortable situation. Around her, other patients came and went. A businessman in an expensive suit arrived 20 minutes after Sarah and was called back within 10 minutes. An elderly woman with a diamond bracelet was escorted to a private room almost immediately. Sarah watched this pattern repeat itself. Those who looked affluent, those who spoke with authority, those who wore their privilege like armor, they all moved through the system with ease. Meanwhile, Sarah's number never seemed to get closer to being called. Every time she approached the desk to inquire about the delay, Jessica would give her the same dismissive response. "We're very busy today. You'll have to wait." By 11 a.m., Sarah's pain had intensified. The shrapnel fragments felt like they were grinding against her bones. She'd been trained to endure discomfort, but this was different. This was medical pain, the kind that required professional attention. She wheeled herself back to the reception desk. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice still polite but strained. "I've been waiting for 2 hours. My appointment was at 9 a.m. and I'm in significant pain." Jessica looked up with barely concealed annoyance. "Ma'am, we don't give priority based on military service. This isn't the VA. You'll wait your turn like everyone else." "I'm not asking for special treatment," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the pain. "I'm asking about my scheduled appointment time." "The doctor is busy with paying patients," Jessica snapped. "Your government insurance doesn't cover priority service." The words hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Sarah felt something inside her chest tighten, not from the physical pain, but from the casual cruelty of the statement. Around the waiting room, other patients shifted uncomfortably. Some stared at their phones. Others found sudden interest in magazine articles they'd already read 3 times. An elderly man in a veteran's cap made eye contact with Sarah and shook his head in disgust. A young mother with her sick child looked embarrassed by what she'd witnessed, but no one spoke up. No one challenged the receptionist's behavior. "I understand you're busy," Sarah said, her military training keeping her voice level. "But I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I was wounded in action. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for the medical appointment that was scheduled." Jessica's expression hardened. "Listen, honey, I don't care where you've been or what you've done. This is a private hospital. We serve patients who can actually pay their bills. Military insurance is a nightmare to deal with, and frankly, it's not worth our time." The reception area fell silent. Even the usual hospital sounds seemed muted. Sarah felt the stares of other patients, some sympathetic, others embarrassed to be witnessing this exchange. She thought about the soldiers she'd served with, the ones who didn't make it home, the ones who'd given everything for a country that apparently couldn't guarantee them basic medical respect. "I'll wait," Sarah said quietly, turning her wheelchair around, "however long it takes." As she moved away from the desk, she heard Jessica mutter to a colleague, "These military types always think they're special. Reality check. Nobody cares about your service when you're not paying premium rates." Hours passed like a slow-motion nightmare. Sarah watched the sun move across the sky through the hospital windows. Her pain medication had worn off, and waves of agony rolled through her body. The shrapnel fragments seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, sending shooting pains down her leg and upper spine. She'd been trained for endurance. In the military, you learn to push through discomfort, to maintain mission focus despite physical challenges. But this was different. This wasn't about national security or protecting fellow soldiers. This was about basic human dignity, about the right to receive medical care she'd already paid for with her service. At 2 p.m., she tried again. "Please," she said to Jessica, who was now eating lunch at her desk. "I've been here for 5 hours. The pain is getting worse." "And I've told you multiple times," Jessica replied between bites of her sandwich. "You'll wait your turn. Stop bothering me." A doctor in scrubs walked by, and Sarah attempted to get his attention. "Excuse me, doctor." "Don't harass our medical staff," Jessica snapped. "Security will escort you out if you can't behave appropriately." Sarah returned to her spot by the window. The elderly veteran who'd been watching earlier wheeled himself over. "This is disgraceful," he said quietly. "I'm calling the patient advocate." "Thank you," Sarah replied, "but I don't want to cause more trouble." "Trouble?" the old man said, his voice rising slightly. "You earned the right to be here. You earned the right to be treated with respect. This isn't trouble. This is justice." As the afternoon wore on, more people began to notice the situation. The elderly veteran, whose name was Frank, had started talking to other patients. Word spread quietly through the waiting room about the young woman in the wheelchair who'd been waiting since 9 a.m., about the receptionist's cruel comments, about the disrespect shown to someone who'd served their country. A nurse named Maria, who'd been working at the hospital for 15 years, approached Sarah during her break. "Honey, I'm so sorry about this," she said quietly. "Jessica's been reported before, but she's related to someone on the board. Nothing ever happens." "I just want to see the doctor," Sarah said, her voice showing the first signs of exhaustion. "I'm not asking for anything special." "You shouldn't have to ask," Maria replied. "What you've already given should be enough." At 4 p.m., Sarah's pain had become almost unbearable. She'd been trained to handle physical discomfort, but 8 hours of sitting in a hard wheelchair while shrapnel ground against her nerves was beyond what anyone should endure. She approached the desk one more time. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't wait much longer. The pain is—" "Are you deaf?" Jessica interrupted. "How many times do I have to tell you? You don't get special treatment. Your appointment was this morning. You missed it. Now you wait for the next available slot. That's how it works in the real world." "I was here at 8:45 a.m., Sarah said, her composure finally beginning to crack. "I've been sitting in this waiting room for over 7 hours." "Then maybe you should have chosen better insurance," Jessica replied with a cruel smile. The afternoon shift change brought new faces to the hospital, but Jessica remained at her post. a constant reminder of the indifference Sarah had encountered. By 5 p.m., Sarah's pain had reached a level that made concentration difficult. She'd been taught to compartmentalize discomfort, to focus on the mission despite physical challenges. But this wasn't a mission. This was survival. Other patients had come and gone. Some had arrived hours after Sarah and been seen immediately. She watched a man in an expensive suit walk directly to the desk, bypass the number system entirely, and disappear into the back offices within minutes. When she tried to point this out to Jessica, the response was always the same. He has premium insurance. Frank, the elderly veteran, had been making calls all afternoon. I've contacted the patient advocate, the hospital administration, and the state medical board, he told Sarah. This is discrimination, plain and simple. I don't want to cause trouble, Sarah replied, though her voice lacked conviction. You didn't cause this trouble, Frank said firmly. You just happened to be the target of it. As the evening approached, Sarah made one final attempt. She wheeled herself to the reception desk, where Jessica was preparing to end her shift. Please, Sarah said, her voice hoarse from hours of waiting. I understand there have been delays. I understand the system is busy, but I've been here since this morning. I served my country. I was wounded in action. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for basic human decency. Jessica looked up from her computer with undisguised contempt. You know what? I'm tired of hearing about your service. Nobody forced you to join the military. You made that choice. Don't expect the rest of us to worship you for it. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. In all her years of service, through all the challenges and dangers she'd faced, she'd never encountered such casual cruelty from the people she'd sworn to protect. At 6:30 p.m., as the evening shift took over, Sarah sat in her wheelchair near the window, watching the sun set over the parking lot. The pain in her side had become a constant, grinding presence. She'd been in the hospital for nearly 10 hours, and her scheduled appointment had been forgotten, dismissed, or deliberately ignored. Her phone buzzed. A text message from her mother. How did the appointment go, honey? Sarah stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could she explain that she'd spent an entire day being treated like a second-class citizen? How could she tell her mother that the daughter she'd raised, the soldier who'd served with honor, had been dismissed and humiliated by people who'd never served anything but their own interests? She was about to call her mother when she noticed a commotion at the main entrance. A tall man in a dark suit was walking through the lobby with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested authority. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with graying hair and the upright posture of someone accustomed to command. The man approached the reception desk, where Jessica's replacement, a younger woman named Amy, was settling into her shift. Good evening, the man said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. I'm Dr. Richard Morrison, Chief of Medicine. I need to speak with whoever handled patient scheduling this morning. Amy looked nervous. That would be Jessica, but she just left for the day. I see, Dr. Morrison said, his voice remaining calm but taking on a harder edge. And who can tell me about a patient named Sarah Chen? She had a 9 a.m. appointment that apparently was never honored. Sarah's head snapped up. Someone was asking about her. Someone with authority was finally paying attention. Dr. Morrison's eyes swept the waiting room until they found Sarah. When their gazes met, something extraordinary happened. The doctor's professional composure cracked, and his face showed first surprise, then recognition, then something that looked like shame. Sarah, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Sarah Chen? Sarah looked at him more closely. The face was older, weathered by years of civilian life, but she recognized the eyes. Dr. Morrison? She said uncertainly. Colonel Morrison? The man who'd been her commanding officer in Afghanistan, the surgeon who'd saved her life after the IED explosion, stood in the lobby of the hospital where she'd been ignored and humiliated for 10 hours. Dr. Richard Morrison, former Army colonel, current chief of medicine at St. Mary's General Hospital. He walked over to her wheelchair, his face showing a mixture of emotions, recognition, concern, and growing anger. My God, Sarah, what are you doing here? I was told there was a patient scheduling issue, but I had no idea. I had an appointment this morning, Sarah said, her voice barely steady. I've been waiting since 9 a.m. Dr. Morrison's expression darkened. You've been waiting since 9 a.m.? It's nearly 7 p.m. Why wasn't I notified immediately? The receptionist said military insurance doesn't get priority, Sarah replied. She said I had to wait like everyone else. The chief of medicine's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, cold fury. She said, "What?" Around them, the waiting room had gone quiet. Other patients and staff members sensed that something significant was happening. "Sarah," Dr. Morrison said, his voice carrying the same tone of command she remembered from their deployment. "You saved my life in Kandahar. You pulled me out of that burning vehicle when I was unconscious. You carried me to safety while your own leg was shattered." The waiting room fell completely silent. Even the ambient hospital sounds seemed to fade as Dr. Morrison's words hung in the air. Sarah felt the weight of every stare, every suddenly attentive face turned in her direction. "I don't talk about this often," Dr. Morrison continued, his voice carrying clearly through the reception area. "But 8 months ago, I was serving as a trauma surgeon in Afghanistan. Our convoy hit an IED. I was unconscious, trapped in a burning vehicle. This woman," he gestured toward Sarah, "crawled through enemy fire with a shattered leg to pull me to safety. She saved my life." He turned to face the reception desk, where Amy sat frozen, her eyes wide with understanding. "And you're telling me that this hero has been sitting in our waiting room for 10 hours because someone decided her military insurance wasn't worth their time?" "Sir," Amy stammered, "I wasn't here this morning. Jessica was handling—" "Where is Jessica?" Dr. Morrison's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed immediately. "She left at 6:30, sir. Her shift ended." "Call her, now. Tell her to return immediately." Amy reached for her phone with shaking hands. Around the waiting room, other patients began to murmur. Some pulled out their phones, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Dr. Morrison knelt beside Sarah's wheelchair, his voice softening. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. This is inexcusable. How long have you been in pain?" "It's not too bad," Sarah replied automatically, her military training making her minimize her discomfort. "Don't give me that military stoicism," Dr. Morrison said gently. "I'm your doctor now, and I'm asking you honestly. How long have you been in pain?" Sarah's composure finally cracked. "All day. The shrapnel fragments are shifting. It feels like they're grinding against my nerves." Dr. Morrison's expression showed both medical concern and personal guilt. "We're going to fix this right now, and then we're going to fix the system that allowed this to happen." Within minutes, the hospital transformed around Sarah. Dr. Morrison's voice carried through the corridors, giving orders with military precision. Nurses appeared with wheelchairs and medical equipment. The same hallways that had been closed to her all day suddenly opened like pathways to priority care. "Get me Sarah's file immediately," Dr. Morrison ordered. "I want a full medical team assembled in OR3, and I want the patient advocate, the hospital administrator, and the head of patient services here within the hour." As Sarah was wheeled toward the medical wing, she passed the reception desk where Jessica was just returning, her face showing confusion and growing concern. Dr. Morrison intercepted her before she could reach her station. "Jessica," he said, his voice carrying the kind of calm authority that preceded significant consequences, "I need you to explain to me why a decorated war hero spent 10 hours in our waiting room without receiving medical attention." Jessica's face went pale. I don't know what you mean, sir." Sarah Chen. 9 a.m. appointment. You told her that military insurance doesn't get priority. You told her that we serve paying patients first. You told her that nobody cares about her service. Ring any bells? The reception area had filled with hospital staff and remaining patients, all watching the confrontation unfold. Jessica looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. "Sir, I was just following hospital policy." "What policy?" Dr. Morrison interrupted. "Show me the policy that says we discriminate against veterans. Show me the policy that says we ignore scheduled appointments based on insurance type. Show me the policy that says we treat American heroes like second-class citizens." Jessica had no answer. Around them, the audience of staff and patients waited in tense silence. "You're terminated," Dr. Morrison said simply. Security will escort you out. You'll receive information about the investigation into your conduct, and you should expect to hear from our legal department." While Dr. Morrison dealt with the administrative consequences, Sarah finally received the medical attention she'd been seeking for 10 hours. The pain that had been grinding through her body all day was addressed with professional care and genuine concern. The shrapnel fragments were stabilized, the pressure on her nerves relieved. As she recovered in a private room, Sarah reflected on the day's events. The same institution that had dismissed her in the morning was now treating her with the utmost care. It wasn't her service record that had changed. It was the recognition of her humanity by someone who understood its value. Dr. Morrison visited her during recovery. "Sarah, what happened today was inexcusable. I've initiated a full review of our patient services protocols. We're implementing mandatory training on veterans care, and we're creating a liaison position specifically for military families." "You don't have to do all that," Sarah said. "I don't want special treatment." "This isn't special treatment," Dr. Morrison replied. "This is basic human decency. What you experienced today was discrimination, pure and simple. And it stops now." Over the following weeks, the changes at St. Mary's General Hospital were swift and comprehensive. Jessica's termination was followed by a review of the entire patient services department. New protocols were established to ensure that no patient would ever again be dismissed based on their insurance type or background. Frank, the elderly veteran who had witnessed Sarah's treatment, became the hospital's first veterans patient advocate. Mariah, the nurse who had shown compassion during Sarah's ordeal, was promoted to head of patient relations. The waiting room was redesigned to include a memorial wall honoring local veterans. But the most significant change was cultural. The staff began to understand that every patient deserved respect, regardless of their ability to pay or their background. Sarah's experience had exposed a system failure that went far beyond one cruel receptionist. 6 months later, Sarah returned to St. Mary's General Hospital, not as a patient, but as a speaker at the hospital's first annual Veterans Appreciation Day. The same waiting room where she'd been humiliated was now filled with staff members, patients, and community members gathered to honor those who had served. Dr. Morrison introduced her to the assembled crowd. "6 months ago, this hospital failed one of our nation's heroes. Today, we're not just apologizing for that failure, we're committing to ensuring it never happens again." Sarah's speech was simple but powerful. She spoke about service, about the importance of treating every person with dignity, about the responsibility that comes with caring for others. She didn't dwell on her mistreatment, but instead focused on the positive changes that had emerged from it. "What happened to me was wrong," she said, "but what matters isn't the wrong, it's what we do to make it right. This hospital has shown that institutions can change, that people can learn, and that respect is something we can all choose to give." After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the hospital corridors. She was walking now, her injuries fully healed, and saw the changes everywhere. Veterans' identification cards were honored with priority scheduling. Staff members wore pins showing their commitment to veterans' care. The memorial wall displayed photos of local heroes, including some who had been patients in the very rooms where they were now honored. The hospital had become a model for veterans' care, hosting delegations from other medical institutions who wanted to learn from their transformation. Sarah's story had become a catalyst for change not just at St. Mary's, but throughout the regional healthcare system. As she prepared to leave that day, Sarah encountered a young veteran in a wheelchair waiting for an appointment. The man looked nervous, uncertain, perhaps wondering if he would be treated with respect. Sarah approached him with a warm smile. "First time here?" she asked. He nodded. "I'm a little nervous. Sometimes hospitals aren't, well, they're not always great with veterans." "You're going to be fine," Sarah said confidently. "They'll take good care of you here. I can guarantee it." As she walked toward the exit, Sarah passed the reception desk where a new patient services coordinator, a veteran herself, was greeting patients with genuine warmth and respect. The nameplate read, "Amy Johnson, Veterans Liaison." The automatic doors slid open, and Sarah stepped into the afternoon sunlight. Behind her, the hospital continued its mission of healing, now guided by the understanding that every patient deserved dignity, every person deserved respect, and every act of service, whether military or civilian, deserved recognition. The transformation was complete. A moment of cruelty had become a catalyst for compassion. A system that had failed had learned to serve. And Sarah Chen, who had once been dismissed and forgotten, had become the reason why no veteran would ever again be ignored within those walls. Sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with the quiet insistence that every person deserves to be treated with dignity. Sometimes the greatest victories are won not on foreign battlefields, but in the everyday moments when we choose respect over indifference, compassion over cruelty. And sometimes the most powerful changes begin with a single person who refuses to accept that this is just how things are, and instead demands that things be as they should be.